Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before we get into this week's episode, I'd like to let you know about my newly launched course, Your Awakened Voice. This is a self-led course for you to release the power of your voice. So if you want to launch a podcast, speak in public, or just confidently express yourself in your daily life and you still feel stuck in your stories or fears around your voice, this course is going to support you to clear any energetic blockages, release your disempowering fears, and unlock the hidden potential of your voice. It's now more than ever the world needs people in their true voice. For more details and to enroll in the course, check the link in the show notes. Also, to remind you that Her Conversations has a sister podcast, Her Inspirations, and on each episode of Her Inspirations, I explore things that we encounter as we embark on our spiritual and awakening journeys. Do take a listen, and in addition to that, if you join the mailing list, you will get every Monday an email that will have additional talking points, meditation, journaling, inspiration notes to help you on your journey. Also linked to additional resources and exclusives. Use the link in the show notes to join up, and you'll also receive the free Embodied Higher Energetic Resonance course. This is where you'll feel into your vision physically, emotionally and spiritually, and start to take action on your dreams. My guest this week is MAI a Somatic womb mage. She is the founder of MAI Collective and works with the modalities of womb wisdom, womb wellness, embodiment dance and somatic movement. Through her lifelong path as a truth seeker, MAI has explored many modalities and believes that we often use spirituality to bypass our feelings and reality. During our conversation, we talk about the need to reconnect to the wisdom of the feminine and honouring our transitions and transformations. So as always, I begin by asking our guests, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
When do I feel the higher energetic resonance? When I am in ceremony and I'm facilitating and the feminine energy is around me and there's feminine flow, and then I just channel. And for me, that's when I meet spirit in my womb, and that's my higher energetic resonance.
Thank you. Thank you so much, MAI. And before we go on further into the conversation, please just share about yourself, how you got to where you are, being the woman and giving the world what you're giving the world at the moment.
It was a long story, but to cut it really short, my husband and I lost absolutely everything and we hit rock bottom. And I had been studying psychology. I was doing an honors in psychology, and then I specialized in the field of trauma. And that moved me from spirituality into a very academic realm. And through that academic realm, I felt like I'd been pushed out of everything. But when we lost everything, it forced me to come back to myself. When you hit rock bottom, you don't look for anything. You've got one thing to follow, and that's your intuition, and that's what I did. And even while I was studying, just before then, we had lost everything, and it was magically paid for. In that time, my husband got a call to move to Cape Town. We were living in Johannesburg at the time. And everything just fell into place by following our intuition. The problem, though, was so often I had spiritually bypassed my feelings. And so I had come I was actually still at the time in deep postnatal depression. And so to really get up and be called within a calling to help other women. I had heard various rape cases through trauma training, and I knew that was what I wanted to hold space for. I knew those were the women that I wanted to be around. And then the pandemic hit. And soon after, everything we had ever known literally disappeared. And there was this advert, I'll never forget it, for womb wisdom. I had never heard about womb wisdom ever before. And something on it said blood wisdom, which I felt was very interesting. And something just, I can literally still feel it in my sacral and my womb, said, I need to do this. And I didn't even know how, because we had just really come out of a lot of financial trauma of my own. And I just signed up and I went with it. And the word that came out at the end of it was embodiment. And literally within 3 weeks, I found myself in a free embodiment container. And so that was the beginning of me taking womb wisdom, which I teach now, and embodiment, which is held, whatever you do, you can embody. And when you do, it's held in the 3D. So that meant the end of my own spiritual bypassing. It meant dealing with my wounding. I understood for the first time why I actually had postnatal depression. And I began to heal myself emotionally, energetically, physically, spiritually, on all the levels. And so these two modalities for me, part of what I weave today is that in womb wellness, because there's still an academic in me, and I bring in the womb wellness in order to understand the physical health of our womb space. So if I had to tie it up for you quickly, it really was a coming of following my intuition. What I do now is I do believe that we can heal, but we heal ourselves with our own codes, our own energy. We shouldn't be looking for someone else as a guru. And it is when we deal with our emotion, energy and emotion, we can move it through us. And then we're not stuck in the story looping, and we're not sitting with a lifetime of deconditioning. And that's my biggest mission right now, is if every woman on the planet is seen, heard, and felt, that paves a whole new pathway for future generations. And then they don't have to sit with a lifetime of deconditioning. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's great. One thing when you said deconditioning, that I was thinking of what is more important than that, because there's been so much conditioning of women to be so much that is anything but what a woman is or what a woman represents. There's this upswell now of women like yourself who are like, we have to change this, we need to shift this around. So that's creating like a new wave and a new awareness of healing. But then there is still so many women that are so far away from even hearing this message. Where do you start in terms of when somebody comes to you in the beginning of their journey, in the beginning of their exploration of wanting to reconnect to something that they realize they're not connected to? How do you start to open that up for them?
So the first place I start is by helping them connect to their body. We're so disconnected from our body. We don't even know what our feminine parts are called. I'll go as so far to say as most women don't even realize they know they have a womb. They don't know where sometimes their ovaries or fallopian tubes even are. It's that basic. So when you connect to your body, only then can you begin to feel yourself, which is your energy, which is your life force, which is your breath. So it starts right at the beginning. And I find one of two women come to me. It's either a really spiritual woman who's been on a path and she knows that there's something more. And this process helps her remember who she is. It uncovers the soul and who they are. And then I've got another woman who will come to me, which is someone who's either dealt with endometriosis, PID, a womb illness, so to speak. And with them, I still start them both on the same journey. It still starts connecting to your body so that you can hear your womb. What's so beautiful is we've got meridians in our hands. And so I often say to them, place your hands on your womb space And a lot of the time they may not get anything in the beginning, but the energy in their hands still activates the energy in their wombs. And a lot of them can say, I've never felt my womb. I've never known that there's energy within that space. So that's where I start with them, by connecting them to their body.
I was just like imagining doing that as well, and knowing that that's like the power center, and yet there's so much fear, and like even what you said about they don't even know what their parts are called. It's like, that's crazy, you know, that we don't or won't mention the words, especially in just thinking about the way that you would communicate to a little child, you know, just tell them what the stuff is called instead of making these fancy words around it, because then if you're not calling something by its name, then energetically you're not connecting with it, or it's going to show up in a different way. You know, for example, I'm thinking like for people call me Carol or Carol May, that I don't mind. But then there are people who know me and will call me Kaz, and I'll respond to them differently because I know them differently, because in order to earn the honor of being able to call me that, we've gone to a certain place, you know, so then I respond differently. And as you were saying, calling it by not knowing what your female parts are, what your womb parts are called really, or where they're even located, is then like, how can you connect with something if you're not calling it by the name it needs to be called by, vibrationally, or that it's even aware, you know, like that it's even there. And so what would you say then, like going by that, if we're not calling our feminine parts by the names that they are, so we're not responding to them, we're not communicating with them, are some of the results or conditions of not communicating with our womb, like almost pretending it's not there, you know? What can show up as a result of that separation?
As a result of that separation, the biggest thing I will say is numbness. There is no feeling. Most women cannot even be sexually aroused by themselves even. I will go as so far as to say that. And the thing is, what we do different, what I tend to teach differently is first connect with yourself, first connect with your body. I don't know, some of your listeners may be aware or not aware of de-armoring with a yoni wand. And I see people go to this practice so often, yet they have not learned how to first connect with who they are. And so as you would get consent from a partner, you need to get consent from yourself. Am I allowed to do this? Can I feel? So to answer your question, what I see more often than not is numbness. But then we think, okay, we need to fix it in a specific way. So let's say de-armoring is where they go to. But there's so many more layers to getting to know yourself. And it comes from what's out there. Okay, I want to empower myself, so now I must de-armor myself. No, it starts with, again, I'll go back, connecting to yourself, connecting to your body. A practice as simple as standing in front of the mirror and looking at yourself completely naked. Most women cannot do that. It's where I start. And then seeing, okay, well, what does my arm do? My arm enables me to eat. I can lift the fork because my arm enables me to eat. And it's seeing the blessings of our body and seeing and connecting to them, like you were saying. So that first point is connection. I can give you so many examples of separation, but right now I would like to encourage your listeners to connect. And you can go and stand in front of the mirror every day and breathe into those parts that you despise, because that is where the empowerment lives. And your breath is life force, right? So you breathe into those spaces which you feel disconnect, and then the energy comes in to awaken those parts, and then you begin to feel. And when you begin to feel, you can, I always tell my ladies, you can ride the highest highs, you can also feel the lowest lows, but you're present and you're alive and you're feeling in those moments.
And yeah, like you say, it's so confronting to just stand there and just look at your body and allow it to be what it is, and allow it to show you that where you are is a result of what you've experienced. No good, whether you want to say good or bad, or how your body is presenting itself to you is how you've treated your body, how you've loved your body, or how you've punished your body, with whatever that may be. And especially the disconnect that women have with their bodies based on an ideal image that has been foisted on us, which constantly changes as well. If you think about it, you know, what the quote unquote ideal body is, and then women are trying to kind of push themselves into it, where you know, we're not that, we've never been that. Like the ideal is that you have a functioning body. That's the ideal. You feel like, let's start there. But yeah, you're comparing yourself to some like airbrush filtered version, or like AI version nowadays, of what the feminine form should be like, especially to be considered as a sensual vessel, and let alone a creative vessel. And that separation again from like, well, I don't look like that, so what have I got here? And like, how am I going to be able to learn to connect and love with that, and to learn those things from an early age? Because I definitely wasn't given that messaging, and not to blame anyone who was around me in my family. It was just wasn't done societally. It was just like, you know, you cover up, there's so much shame about your body and so much fear about your body. If you think like as a young girl, you know, the minute that you start to develop breasts and hips and things like that, it's like suddenly you're told to, you know, and I'm just thinking, well-meaning women in my family would be like, now your skirt, you can't wear your skirt to that short, because you will be someone will come and get you, you know, like you will be a result of a predator. You'll end up getting raped, you'll get, you know, and all these kinds of things. So suddenly now your body becomes something that you have to hide, because it's a danger and it's attracting attention that is actually going to disempower you. And then, of course, you know, you start to develop breasts, but then what do? We kind of like shove them into bras and stuff like that. I hate wearing bras now. I really don't like them. It's the most uncomfortable thing. You know, I'll get like vest tops or something that kind of hold it together. But even then, it's like, I'm taking them, like, if I'm not going anywhere, then I'm not going anywhere. I'm just sitting in the house on your own. Why do I need this? You know, the whole wonder bra movement and everything like that. You know, speak more on this anyway. This is your sphere of excellence.
It is one of the biggest forms, wearing a bra, of causing breast cancer. Number one, that's what a lot of people don't even realize. Number two, exactly like you say, why would I or you put on a bra? Because of what someone else is going to say when I go get my groceries. I'm a woman fully in my truth. And so I go out there without a bra on, and it's not to be feminist. It is not to be any one of these things. It is because, like you said earlier, I do not carry shame. And so all these processes, exactly what you've spoken on, it is a conditioning of shame. It is a conditioning of guilt. Oh, you can't wear a skirt that short, because exactly like you say, somebody is going to come after you. So for us to take responsibility and change the narrative to say, wear what you want, but be an empowered woman and speak your truth. Interestingly enough, the womb, the heart, the throat, all connected. So when you are fully connected to your womb space, when you can, I often encourage women, this is what I see again, people cannot speak their truth. I say, close down your eyes, place one hand on your heart and one hand on your womb, or just place one hand on your heart. And what is it that you want to say? And they're so scared of disappointing somebody, the people pleasing, the approval, the being a yes girl. This is all what this work melts away, which is what I love about it. And then I say to them, right, speak from your heart. And I can guarantee you anything that is coming out your mouth will be truth, will come from a loving place where you don't need to have any fear. And what is fear again? Fear is taught, a learned behavior. We learn these things. So my biggest movement when it comes to being who you are is place one hand in your heart and walk that path of truth. Because at the end of the day, when you're lying on your deathbed, what is it that you wanted? It's not what everyone else wanted for you.
The deathbed one is one I use on myself all the time. I'm like, do I want to go out having not done all of these things? But then even then, I find that even the thought of going to their grave without realizing the expansion of themselves or what they could have done in the world is not even a big enough draw to actually do something or speak truth, or it's just still staying small, playing that long-term good girl narrative that does really nothing for anybody. It doesn't help anybody. And especially then if you're a mother playing a good girl role, then you're giving birth to another, you're just perpetuating this disempowered line of women that then, it's not really going to help anybody. But then also, these are the women, unfortunately, who get so easily swayed by the imaging and the messaging about what women should be and what women should do. And especially right now, because of the age that I'm at, I'm very much in the bracket of the menopausal messaging that's been fired at me left, right, and center. But I'm not doing this. It's like, no way. I'm not on the end of something where I'm just going to fall off into the abyss of invisibility for the next 30 or 40 years of my life and just go, well, those were the good old days when I was young, and like everything pointed upwards. And I'm being very conscious of what I'm going through, because I'm like, this transition is going to be something that I write about and then feed back to others, because it's not going to be the end of me. It isn't the end of me. I'm like, absolutely not. It's like I've consolidated years of wisdom now, and I've got it here, and I can clearly see now how my life makes sense. Because when I was in the middle of it, sometimes like, why am I going through this all the time? And now it's like, oh right, okay, this is why it's happened now. And for me, and I can see for other women who are embracing this point in their life, that it's only at this point where they're just like, the life makes sense. But if you're lining yourself up against where society tells you, like, you should have peaked at 35, and like, what are you, it's like, and I'm thinking, like, as grown as I thought I was at 35, I didn't really know anything at all. How do you speak to women who are going through this transition, through this out into this age of wisdom now, where they can bring in a new understanding of what their womb space represents? Because obviously for most it will be the end of their childbearing years, so you're not going to be able to physically give birth, but energy doesn't die, right? So it's not just going to be poof poof and dissipate away. So how do you guide women through this stage of their life to be able to then utilize that energy so that they can continue to be creative, they continue to be sensual, and all the things that come with this?
I haven't obviously gotten to that. We call these different rites of passage. Let me start there. And so you have the menarche, which is when you bleed, and then you get the maiden, that's your 20s, coming to your 30s as the mother. Even if you haven't had a child, you are still at the rite of passage as a mother. Then your 40s, you come into what some people call the enchantress. I call it your queendom. And then you come into menopause. So what's very interesting about what you noted earlier is, like you were saying, 36, 35, just before our 40s, we start to question everything. We start to question our life, what's gone on with it. And then we hit our 40s. And then normally this is when there's this major life transition. And it's actually your soul recalling what you're here to do. And then you go into menopause. It's very different for women as well. So some go in a bit earlier, some go in later. But how you experience menopause is how you consciously experience yourself and your own rite of passage. I kicked and screamed my way through maidenhood, motherhood. This queendom was the only one, because I was aware of what I was doing, where I stopped screaming through a rite of passage, which will enable me to, when I get to become a crone, I will have a very easy transition, and it will be a celebration. It will be joyful. And why I'm telling you that is because when you become a crone, you have the most incredible wisdom. It's why your bleed stops. But for most women, they start to grieve what they were and not what they are about to become. And you and I chatted about it previously. So in ancient cultures, you would be revered. People would come to you. They actually used to have something so beautiful called the grandmother lodge. And you could take out a community if you took out the grandmother lodge, because they hold so much wisdom. Now what happens if you start grieving and you start all of a sudden trying to be something you're not? That is going to make your menopause, and I can guarantee your menopausal symptoms will be worse because of it. So what I try to do with these women is get them to embrace their rite of passage. You may not bleed, but you still cycle energetically. You still are a cyclical being moving through 4 seasons. And I help them to connect so that they can still live a life cyclically. But what I encourage them to do more than ever is to open up to their intuition. Because if you don't, that's when dementia will kick in, because your third eye will be blocked. So what I try to say to them is, are you in a community where you are revered? I often pull them into our own red tent spaces and say, the women will love you. They will love your wisdom because they revere you and they see you for the crone and the wise woman that you are. Which, again, if we take it back to normal society, what are you going to do? You're going to shove your grandmother in a home. That's what most people will do, instead of allowing her to blossom and bloom. And that is why at this point, they normally connect really well to their grandchildren, because there's a rebirth in them at this time. They remember their inner child. They want to play. They want to do all these beautiful things in life. And so instead of using that as a connection, we say, oh, well, now's the end of your life. You're not good enough for anything. So now you need to be put away. So again, it's the awareness you have of what can be for you. But in my opinion, I tell all my crones, I revere you. I cannot wait until I am able to hold that kind of space and wisdom.
Thank you for that. That's like probably the most powerful and succinct explanation of what it is. And also much of what you're saying is much of what I'm feeling. You know, at this point in time, it's like, let me redefine, let me allow myself to be redefined. Let me allow myself to worship at the experiences that I've had and be grateful for all of them and the fact that I've come out. And then let me start to decide what it is that I'm stepping into now as a new space, as opposed to what the messaging is, like you say, that it's all over. It's, you know, you should have sorted it out. You didn't do the things, and you know, oh, ho hum. You know, it's like a real kind of ho hum kind of situation, and it's like, you know, if you manage it well, for me, it's like I'm going into this as clear-headed as possible. I'm noticing changes in my body. I'm noticing that certain things can't come with me as I'm moving forward. Like we have, I think we spoke before about the transition into puberty. You know, there's all this kind of celebration in the Western world, you know, where we're like, oh, let's, like, you know, we'll show you how to like shave your legs, and this is what you do when you have your periods, and we'll go and buy you like your first bra. I remember going and getting my first bra bought and being measured and everything. It was a whole thing, you know. Whereas now, like, who's kind of taking you out to say like, okay, this is where you're going. It's like, all right, you go, like, you know, vaginal dryness, brain fog, like all the negative things that happen, you know, night sweats and everything. Whereas I'm like looking at, I'm like, am I having these symptoms? What am I having about these symptoms? Why? How am I managing how I'm moving forward. Like one of the things that I'm noticing is like the way that I used to cope with emotions sometimes is like I'll just kind of like have a bit more sugar, you know. And looking at that coping mechanism that I used to use that maybe I should have dropped 10 years ago really can't come with me now, because not only am I going to continue to try and suppress these emotions within my body and the reasons why, and like looking at the reasons why, and not beating myself up for having those coping mechanisms, but realizing now I need to allow myself to feel what it was that I suppressed, that I'm big enough now to actually deal with that. And maybe, you know, at that time I needed to kind of like push the pain away just to get through. But now, you know, I've lived enough life to realize that it wasn't the breaking of me, but I used those coping mechanisms. But now those coping mechanisms will be quite necessarily like detrimental to my physical health, let alone anything else as well. And also then, do I want to witness myself as a crone using girly coping mechanisms? Really just kind of taking a whole bird's eye view, observing everything that I do. I'm like, am I still playing a girl in a woman's body? And like, how unattractive is that? Because we always kind of have the thing about the woman who's lamb dressed as mutton, or mutton dressed as lamb, shall I say?
No.
Kind of the, you know, but in the same way, like, as you don't want to be mutton dressed as lamb, for want of a better phrase, do you want to be behaving as lamb when you're in that crone phase, when you're in that wisdom phase? Do you still want to be going around like some teenage girl and allowing yourself to be moved left and right when you've got years of life that I'm sure everyone has years of wisdom, whether they choose to actually look at how the experiences of their lives have shaped them and have taught them things, whether you want to be conscious about it or not. Everyone has that story and that opportunity to turn back.
That is someone still stuck in a rite of passage, and that is an uninitiated woman, what I call an uninitiated woman, because like you said, we are not able to celebrate these times. We are not taken through a proper ceremonial rite of passage. And again, in Indigenous cultures, they are taken through that rite of passage, and that obviously affects the energetics. So a woman who is trying to do that has not walked that rite of passage. She is still in the previous rite of passage, which means she cannot claim the gifts from the current rite of passage because she's still stuck in the old one. And so what I actually do with women, I just did it this weekend. I ran a free 3-day red tent retreat, and I gave them that rite of passage, that initiation. The ripple effect that caused was massive. And then we begin to grieve. We begin to grieve for what we have lost, for what we never had. And that wherever you are begins to change and move you into a rite of passage, because then your heart can open. And then, like we were expressing about the shame earlier, then there's not all this pent up shame and guilt because we've expressed who we are and we start remembering who we be.
Let's pivot a little bit and talk about womb wellness and the prevalence of conditions that women are plagued with, like fibroids, endometriosis. It's almost like so common.
It is, because we're living in a fast-paced world, a world that is, our energy can't catch up with that. And so we push, and that is the masculine. That is not the feminine. The feminine allows. So what happens, and I'm an endometriosis candidate. I had it for many years. I was the overachiever. I was the yes girl. I was all the things. And we push and push and push. And our body is trying to tell us, slow down, slow down, slow down. And so it is in the slowing down. And literally what I do with women with these conditions is I take them through a steaming protocol, a yoni steaming protocol, because yes, it's going to help you physically, but that's also going to help you energetically. So the core of those particular womb illnesses is that overachiever, that fast pace, that we're moving too fast and our energy needs to get a chance to catch up.
I just wanted you to speak more about yoni steaming, because it just seems like a really mysterious practice that you kind of see, and it's like, what's all that about? It kind of looks like witchy goddessy stuff that happens in the in the woods. Like, what is that all about? Break it down completely, like all the things that you use and the benefits of taking part in that practice.
Sure. So what it basically is, clearing your womb space. I make it very witchy. I like all things witchy, but you don't have to. And there are also, what people don't realize, there's 4 kinds of blends you should be using, and that is all dependent on your cycle. It is dependent on your rite of passage. A lot of the time, we just go online and go, oh, I want to learn how to yoni steam, and we push the button and order the herbs. Don't. Find yourself a yoni steaming consultant first. The benefits of it are profound. I used to have the most horrific water retention. It eases PMS. It eases water retention. It improves circulation. It increases fertility. There are many different things. I love it the most for toning the vaginal walls and canals. That it is profound. You can use yoni eggs for that, but I will still use yoni steaming for that over and above anything else. The juiciness that you experience, and you smell, you're using herbs, you end up smelling like a flower. Many women feel very shamed at how they smell. You will smell gorgeous. Your juices will flow. It is the most beautiful self-care ritual you can do for yourself, but it also obviously enhances your womb in terms of wellness. What it is great for in terms of wellness, it literally will clear you out if you're still bleeding. If you use it 3 days before you bleed and 3 days after you bleed, that I find is amazing, because it'll clear you out before, and anything left over, it will clear you out again afterwards. Then from an energetic point of view, what I use it for is to clear energy and to call in and to connect to spirit. So I use it. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anyone use it the way I use it. It's very different. But it's more used for womb health. And then if you're suffering postpartum, it's amazing for helping you heal postpartum. Again, all these other different things we've spoken about, fibroids, endometriosis, I put someone straight on a yoni steaming protocol, because what it does is it pulls out the scar tissue, and that is profound. So obviously there's a deep cleansing and clearing process that occurs with that.
Let's talk about fertility or infertility and the issues around that. I have friends who that's been their story, and have spent years really trying to conceive and to no avail. And then sometimes the relationship will break down as a result. It's painful. One person in mind that I'm thinking about, during the course of her marriage, that was like the prevailing thing, and they spent a lot of money on IVF treatments, and none of them was successful. And now the marriage that is dissolved, basically, and so she's going through all of that. And I feel for her, because surrounding her are other members of her family that were just popping out kids left, right, and centre, and even work colleagues who accidentally got married, got pregnant. So when you've got someone making that active, conscious decision to try to conceive, what is that doing? Is it like, what is that creating, especially when you so want it to happen, and then you're having to deal with the disappointment of it not being you? You're happy for other people, but like your happiness is just highlighting your own pain and your own feeling of failure for your body to not able to do the thing that a woman is supposed to do at the core. Like, how do you serve women who are experiencing that?
The first thing I would do is invite them to grieve, because it is a loss. They feel like like you're saying, they don't feel like they effective women. They don't feel like they can do what they were meant to do. And for that is a grieving process. And then with a lot of the women I work with, I invite them to come into a circle space where they're supported by other women. That's really big. and for them to tap into their womb space. Their womb space is the most beautiful place of abundance and creativity and life force. And quite often I see, and not all the time, but often, infertility is normally a sign of a woman in the masculine holding down a very masculine job in a very corporate world. That's most often, not all the time. And so they, again, are on that go, go, go. So normally testosterone levels are higher. Because of that, our body adapts. It's so smart. We have the most incredible body wisdom. But for me, a woman going through that journey, and my sister has had many IVF treatments, and failed IVF treatments, I think, are an even deeper grieving process. So like anything, I would say experience what you are feeling instead of numbing it, and grieve with sisters who understand what you're going through, because those women, every other woman will come and tell them what they feel. And I always believe this, unless you have walked in someone's shoes, you will not understand their path.
Just thinking of this one friend and knowing that it was so important for her to become a mother. It's not going to be her reality. And because she was consciously making that decision, because she was within the container of a marriage, the absence of that being successful and then the marriage not being there is going to leave such a gap in her life, not having that partner, and then not having had produced in the way that she wanted to produce. So like my situation is different. I was speaking to a friend about it the other day. It's like I didn't realize I was consciously making the choice to not be a mother, because I always thought I would. So it was one of these things. I always thought I would. And she was saying, well, now that you're at this age and you're not going to do it, how are you with that? And I'm like, it's not that I'm trying to put it into words, because I always thought I would. And then I'm like, well, it's a pity, because I'm actually now the most patient, and I would be a really good parent now, as opposed to any time earlier in my life. But also earlier, the guys that I was with, I didn't want to be a parent with them. And also having been raised as a child of a single parent, just through bereavement, not through, just that choice, I saw how hard it was. So I didn't want to do that on my own, or, I didn't want to do that on my own for myself. And also I didn't want to do that on my own for the child, because whether you want to take it on board or not, when you're a child of a single parent, you take on a responsibility that shouldn't be on your shoulders as a child. And that's even if your parent is well. You become very much aware that you've only got like one person who's there in the world for you, as opposed to two or more. So it was then as well for me reconciling that that's not what is going to be real for me in this life, and not even grieving it, because I'm like, I know why I made that choice. I don't want to bring a child into this world in the middle of me going through all of that stuff, in the middle of me not feeling that I was choosing partners adequate enough to be the father of my child, or being able to create the family that I would have done. Because then I also have friends who are of my age who have children that have brought them up on their own. And some of them, they love their children, but they're just reminded of the mistake that they made with this guy 20 odd years ago. It's always like, at least when I bump into my ex, it's like, oh, hi, yeah, bye. I don't have to kind of keep being reminded of where my mind was back when I thought this person was a person worthy of being with me. So again, so another realization that I'm doing is like, okay, so what am I going to do with this energy now? What am I going to do that's not part of the picture? Where can I be nurturing? Where can I be maternal? Where can I express this? Like, my choice was my choice, and my choice was based on, I don't want to do it on my own. And there was never the opportunity for me to do it with anyone else, because I didn't find anyone suitable. For me, it's like holding onto the reality of my choices, owning my choices, and not beating myself up for those choices. And I can see also sometimes that women are moving forward, we're talking again with regrets, not grieving things or accepting things in the way that can be conducive to them moving forward and not feeling that they've left something behind, or there's a window is closed or a choice has been gone for them as well, so that they can kind of still maintain that that space of juiciness, not holding themselves down or beating themselves up for what they didn't achieve.
In womb wisdom, we call it womb medicine, and that is a process of acceptance and understanding. And you don't have to understand exactly why, but by accepting it, you allow it. And by allowing it, that wounding melts on its own. Yes, you have time, you have a grieving process, and you have a process of letting go. But energetically speaking, that happens so much faster. And you're a wise woman, because partners leave energetic imprints behind in our womb space. So imagine you've got a walking energetic imprint of what was. So I think you're very wise to have seen that. But also, if I see what you're doing now, you are birthing a massive project. That is a baby. That is a representation of something huge that you are gifting into the world. So no, maybe you didn't have a physical child, but you certainly are now later birthing a baby.
I do really feel that as well. So, it's just understanding that this is what I'm here to create. And feeling very, very protective and very optimistic about what it can be and who and how it's going to show up, in all different ways. And talking of creation, talk about more of your creations as well. Share some of the other things you do, because I know it's not just this.
So my biggest, what lights me up the most is a program I run called Womb With Me. And I get to witness these women come in and connect and clear and heal their wounding. And that, for me, I will live to do that day in and day out, because it is soul fulfilling. And so that is something I run, something I'm dedicated to. I've got a free community, and I will always have that community free, and it's called Womunity, because my mission is to make sure every woman is seen, heard, and felt. Because if we make sure that every woman is seen, heard, and felt, we can live in the world that we really want to live in. And then I'm very witchy, and I have fun with my one-on-one work, and that's a really deep dive into the womb. But I use yoni steaming and embodiment, which is somatic movement, as part of that. And in order to do that, sometimes it's my Womb With Me women that step forward to do that. Other times it's women, again, who have been on a spiritual path for a long time, and they know that they want to connect to and remember their feminine spirit and be the goddess. And so we hear all this talk of the goddess and the queen. Being a queen is literally a rite of passage, and it is an archetype, and the goddess encompasses all rites of passage. And so you hear women saying, oh, I want to be a goddess. And these words are literally, sometimes it irritates me, they're flung around with no presence and consciousness of their meaning. But I connect to women who carry a queen energy, who want to lead, who want to be the change in the world. And so often they need to come back and to remember who they are, to be in their sovereignty. And those are the women that I call in for my one-on-one work. So that's just a brief overview of what I'm passionate and what I'm called to do in this world.
Love it. Love it. And I wanted to ask you as well, for women who are listening to this conversation and have daughters, nieces, young girls around them, what can they do? How can they show up and also start to be guiding lights, so that we start to kind of cut this loop of dysfunction and separation and denial of who we are and what we have within ourselves? What are some just little tips? How can we just show up on a daily basis to set a precedent for these young girls who are being distracted by all of this nonsense in the world, outwardly away from their own bodies, so that they find that embodiment with their body early on, before they get kind of hypersexualized without really even realizing what power that they're messing around with, literally, because especially like you're saying, like you have that energetic imprint of everyone that you ever have partnership with. I wish someone had told me this when I was like younger, instead of thinking like you're being some like empowered, free loving babe. It's like, no, you're just collecting a bag of mess for yourself that you're going to have to undo. Like, what can you offer like as starter tips for women, just saying like, even if we don't think that we are being beacons of womanhood,
Yes.
whether we choose to be role models or not, the fact that we're older, for those young girls, we're modeling what is possible.
I would say I have a daughter, and it's exactly what you're saying. They model on what they see. So where are you in your journey? What are you doing? How are you this is a big one. How are you communicating to them? Because how you communicate what is what they in turn process for themselves. So with her, if I'm going to body shame myself, what's going to happen? She's going to body shame herself. If I'm not present with where I'm at, it's going to have a ripple effect on her. If I'm shameful and I do not want to discuss anything that's got to do with sexuality, that's got to do with periods, that's got to do with the words vagina, pussy, these are words that need to be spoken about, and most women can't even say them. I tell my daughter quite openly and honestly, experience for yourself, with yourself, what pleasure feels like, because nobody else is going to tell you what that is. You need to experience that for yourself. And obviously, I'm very conscious of her age. I'm conscious of what I say. What you would tell a 12-year-old and what you'll tell a 15 or 18-year-old are going to be two completely different things. I've always made sure, does she know what something is? Don't assume they know. That's probably one of the biggest things. I've seen that story play out again and again. Well, my mom never told me. Their first period is probably the biggest thing. Celebrate it, but don't over celebrate it that they're embarrassed about it. So ask what they need. Ask how you can help them, and they will tell you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Before we go, have you got anything coming up that you want to share about what you're doing? And also, please let everyone know where they can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram at MAI Collective, so MAI_collective. Anything that's happening, I'll normally put in there. Come and join us in Community so we can see you and feel you. That's a Facebook group. And then, like I say, Womb With Me is coming up in the next 2 weeks. So if you want to jump in, if you've got loads of questions, I'm always open to help you and answer them if this conversation really resonated with you. And that's it on me. I am who I am in my truth, embodying my queendom.
Love it.
And you are always welcome in my inbox.
Thank you, Marianne, for that. It's a perfect conversation.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be present with you.
Thank you, Marianne, for your contribution to this episode, and thank you for listening. Once again, I invite you to explore the new offerings from Higher Energetic Resonance, and that's your Awakened Voice course. The links are in the show notes. Also links to listen to her inspirations and to join the mailing list to that podcast. And also, this message is for you if you know there is a purpose for your life and you're ready to turn it into reality. My purpose is to help you make that happen. So if you're ready to take those next steps in your transformation and you want to get there with my support, accountability, and radical honesty, contact me to find out about my Higher Energetic Resonance Spiritual Life Coaching Program. Find me on my website, carolmaywhittick.com, CarolMayWhittick.com, Facebook, Carol May Whittick, LinkedIn, Carol May Whittick, and Casmic, CAZMICK on Instagram. Enjoy your week. Until the next episode, take care.